And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Saturday morning showing a couple of areas of IFR out here over the Bering Sea. One here from about the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, up across the Pribilofs, and the next one, Adak and Atka westward all the way to Shimi and Attu. Pretty good VFR in the interior here, but IFR, Brooks Range up across the western central north slope to the Arctic coast. And some marginal VFR here for western Cook Inlet, Kamishak Bay to the Alaska Range, and also over the Copper River Basin, North Gulf Coast. Solid IFR for the Panhandle. And for the afternoon, stays IFR for the southeast coast, although Sitka there may be breaking out to marginal in the afternoon. Marginal VFR continues in the Copper River Basin. And up along the Alaska Range here, some marginal VFR lingering throughout the day. Good VFR, Kodiak Island, Cook Inlet, all the way out to the southwest coast, Nunivak Island, right on up now to much of the North Slope area looking good. And IFR, southeastern Bering Sea here, again on the north side of the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. Marginal VFR, Adak and Atka. To the west, more IFR. And for Sunday morning, IFR over the western Bering Sea and a band extending from Adak and Atka right up along the north shores of Unalaska Island and the Alaska Peninsula. VFR in the interior here, and IFR for the Brooks Range and the North Slope, western Arctic coast. Possibly the Seward Peninsula there, but St. Lawrence Island, VFR. Kodiak Island, south central Alaska, VFR. And some marginal VFR for the eastern North Gulf Coast here into the Coast Range. And marginal now for the Panhandle. For the afternoon, stays marginal for the southeast coast. And marginal VFR pulling back to the northwest here across the southeast quarter of the state down to Cook Inlet, but staying VFR for Kodiak Island. VFR here, Kuskokwim Bay and Bristol Bay, Nunivak Island, right on up into the interior there, right up to the Arctic coast, and then back to marginal VFR there. And that'll extend down through the Bering Strait to St. Lawrence Island. Marginal VFR, central eastern Aleutians, of course, Alaska Peninsula. And IFR, next system, pushing IFR into, well, as far west as Amchitka Island. Passes for the Brooks Range tomorrow. Look for improving conditions, lowest conditions early on, then becoming VFR for both Anatuvik and Adigan throughout the day. And Lake Clark and Merrill, same pattern, marginal VFR becoming VFR midday through the afternoon, but it looks like rainy will stay marginal throughout the day. And for windy, marginal VFR at times Saturday. And for Isabel, marginal VFR. Better conditions north side though, and that same forecast good for Mintesta as well. And for Tanita, marginal VFR. Looks kind of marginal for Portage as well. And for Chilkoot and White, IFR. Freezing levels here, about 2,000 to 4,000 feet there over the eastern Brooks Range. Actually, the Arctic coast down into the eastern Brooks Range. And roughly about 5,000 to 6,000 feet over southern Alaska here, the southern mainland. But running 8,000 to 10,000 feet over the Panhandle. And gradually warming up to about 10,000 feet over the western Aleutians. Icing, not much out here to the west at all, of any significance, into the interior, into the western interior. But we've got the front pushing into the Panhandle. That'll bring a band of considerable moderate rime icing with it. And then the persistent low here in the Gulf of Alaska will also produce possibly some considerable moderate rime icing from Yakutat westward into eastern Prince William Sound, Cordova, maybe Valdez. And from there, the jet stream here, upper level low just south of Prince William Sound. Southwest winds, pretty strong there. Main jet right into the northern Panhandle, just under 100 knots. More light winds here under the trough over mainland Alaska that extends down into toward the Pribilof Islands. And then to the west of this low, broad area of northerly winds out west there, 65 to 85 knots. And 9,000 feet, not much of any significant wind or out here over the Bering Sea or the Aleutians, as well as the interior. Got north-northwest, about 30 knots coming onto the Arctic coast into the North Slope, and then those drop off when they hit the Brooks Range. And southwest winds, 45 knots for the southeast coast. And at 3,000 feet, even lighter, less significant winds at this elevation. Still 30 knots there around Prince of Wales Island. Narrow band of east-southeasterlies, 35 knots, North Gulf Coast and the Prince William Sound. And the eastern Arctic coast up there, northwest or westerlies at about 30 knots or less. Otherwise, nothing. Pretty light winds. Big area high pressure out here over the western Bering Sea and the Aleutians. And with that, not much in the way of turbulence expected around the state tomorrow. Maybe some isolated moderate, especially for small aircraft for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast there. Same thing for the Alaska Peninsula and for the Kamishak Bay area, Barren Islands, North Gulf Coast, possible isolated moderate turbulence, as well as around Prince of Wales Island.